Hey there, and welcome back. So now with our strawberry modeled, we're going to jump in right away and start doing the surfacing. So you can open up your strawberry, or you can open up the one that I created in the Video 8 folder called Strawberry 01. I'm just going to open that up right away. So we want to focus on these three objects here. Now the first thing I'm going to do, as I typically do, is I'm going to add in an environment here. So we're going to go into the Add Layers here, Image Map, and we're going to load that Cherry Hill image once again. And then we're going to open up our preview here. Make sure that's on this frame. And just so I'm not distracted by that background, I'm going to turn off the visibility to camera there. Move this up a little bit. All right. So the first thing I want to tackle here is the seeds. So if we're going to take a look here really quick at our reference, the seeds kind of run sort of from this sort of greenish color to red, sort of a greeny red. So I think I'm going to have somewhere in between this color scheme here. So let's see what we can't get. And also notice that they're rather smooth, so we think we can crank up the specular on those guys. So we're going to go into the strawberry seed layer here, select the material. Now I think I want to get sort of a more of a dull green, maybe darken that up a little bit. And then I also want to up the specular to something, say like maybe 30 to make those guys shiny. We're going to add a subsurface amount in here of 50. I'm going to kind of give that subsurface more of a reddish orange color. Maybe more of a yellow color is going to get me more what I'm after, and I think that's actually looking pretty good there. Maybe move more towards orange. See, a lot of find that when I'm working on a lot of this stuff, just a lot of experimenting and looking around and seeing just what looks right in the context of what it is you're actually working on. So I think that gets us a nice little shiny seed inside of there. So let's jump in and do the strawberry flesh. So the strawberry itself is going to be all about the way the specular is. It's going to be all about that subsurface. You really get the sense that this is just a sort of a gel packet. I mean, it's so the light goes into it so easily. So let's increase that reflection on there to maybe 15. And reduce that roughness maybe to 22. And I'm going to tint that layer of the specular. And I'm also going to throw in the clear coat at about 50% with a roughness of 8. Now these aren't like predetermined values that I sat there and I worked on. It's just years of experience of using the tool and just kind of getting an idea of just the subtle differences of what is going to add what to an object. So let's pump in the subsurface color on there. 50, and see what that's going to give us. So that's really going to make a difference for our object, making it look rich and juicy. You know what, I might even boost that clear coat even more. Maybe dial these seeds back a little more red. Maybe even that highlight could get a little colorization. I'm not a big proponent of making things by the book, sort of measured accuracy. For me, a lot of it is just sort of trusting your eye and looking at it and knowing what the settings do and making adjustments to them so you get the results that you want with your eye to make it look good to you. So I'm not quite getting that deep light going through the strawberry. The same surface will sort of ignore the other surfaces, and maybe we want to make this deeper, that subsurface, and maybe even stronger. Oh yeah, that's what we're getting there. That's looking really good there on that. I think we have that sort of very gel-like sort of quality to the strawberry. And I think there's also sort of a very minor bump map to that. So let's go in and throw in a noise texture. I always love breaking up my highlights with a little bit of noise. I'm going to make that maybe 5 millimeters in size. And bring the gain up to about 65%. And then we're going to set that layer as bump map. And I think initially it's going to be way too strong. We can zoom in here. So we really want to go into that material and maybe make that 100 So it's more of just a subtle little bump on there. All right. Now let's go in and work on this crown on that strawberry. And just to speed things up a little bit, I think I'm going to turn these particular layers off and concentrate on that crown. So the first thing I want to do, turn off this texture locator here, is I think we're going to add in a gradient as we've done. So add layer, processing gradient. And we're going to be, that's going to be the diffuse color. Let's kind of keep an eye on those colors. So it's a very sort of a yellowy green. I think sort of in that range right there. Now let's open up our editor. And again, set this so that our sampler parameter is distance to locator. I'm going to set in another key here. Zoom in on that, and it looks like we're just about perfect in terms of the distance. So I am going to set these keys up and make that a darker green. And then add a key here in this middle part. Let's be mindful again of where our texture locator is. Grab that out of there. Nope, don't want to move the crown. Make sure you're in items mode whenever you're working on a texture locator. Just try and center that right over the top there. Has this nice little cross in there to make sure we get it nice and centered. Just to be sure, let's just get that right up at the top so we can change the color of the top of that. Alright, so put that back into the hidden texture group. Go into the shader tree, select our gradient once again. And let's adjust this color into a kind of a yellowy tan. Maybe this could go even darker. Okay, and I also want to add some streaks, some sort of natural looking streaks into here. So I think how I want to do that is add a Coriolis texture. So that is Enhance Modo's space. And excuse me, it's not the Coriolis. It is the glint. So this is another one where we're going to want to take it out of the texture group. Make sure that we can see that. And we want to set the texture locator on that to planar on the Y. And then we want to scale that up big enough. So you see it's just sort of a quarter repeating itself. So what we want to do to fix that little problem is we're going to go here to the horizontal. We're going to mirror that guy. And then we want to make sure that that corner is right. So top view. All right, make sure that that's now let's adjust the shading on the glint. So the texture layer, I think we want the glint rays. We're going to give it a maximum of 100. This 0.2. See what some of these things do. Alright, so I think that is good enough on that. So let's change this color here to a darky green. Change this one to a very yellowish green. We're going to set that to multiply on top of there for the diffuse color. And then I want to change this down to about 20. We just want to add in some little streaks inside of there to make that look a little bit more natural. Alright, so I think that's looking pretty alright for our purposes, but I think we want to turn down the specularity. Maybe turn the roughness down to about 30 and turn our specular down 3 and the Fresnel to maybe 50. Well, maybe 80. Kind of want a little bit of a leathery look to it. So let's see what that looks like in context with our berries. Alright, I think that looks pretty good, actually, to tell you the truth. So I'm going to go in here and say File, Save As, and we're going to jump into the video 9, and I'm going to save this as Strawberry 02. Overwrite what I have there already. So I think there's one other little quality here that I want to capture on the strawberry cap. If we look back at our reference, you see it has all these little sort of fur things on there. So when I want to try and throw some fur onto there, see if we can't make that look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to think that for this, let me pause the rendering here, is I'm going to select this and then select all of these polygons, and I'm going to define it as a selection set and add my fur into that selection set. And that just allows me to give a different surface to the fur from what's going on up here. So let's go into select and assign a selection set. We're going to call this berry cap. And if I could type berry cap. And then let's jump into the shader tree. We're going to add in another group item. And this one we're going to set the tag type to selection set. Grab that berry cap polygon tag. And then we're going to set the scope to fur. And then we want to jump in here. We're going to say special, add in a fur. And then we're also going to add a material object. So I think we're going to make this sort of a yellowy color. And then the fur spacing can be 3 millimeters, length maybe 7 millimeters. And then we're going to make the width maybe 5%. And then I think I want that render density to go to around 50, so we don't want too many of them. So let us see what that looks like. And it's going to take preview a little while to figure that all out. So yeah, it's giving it that little bit of a fine thing. So when you look at it right onward, you don't get too much of it, but it's at these edges here where it really sort of catches a lot of the light. So maybe we want that density to be a little bit higher. And maybe the length even longer. So you could go in here and we could create an alpha mask so that it wasn't growing on this part of the stem. If we really wanted to be super concerned about accuracy. But I think the cap doesn't quite have the luminous quality that I'm looking for on this. And I think what I'm forgetting is the subsurface scattering on there. So if I go in there and look, yeah, I don't have any subsurface scattering. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an image map, a new image. We're going to call this berry top diff. And I'm going to create that at 2048 RGB. OK. And we can turn that off. And then like before, I'm going to bake to the texture. See, and I wasn't smart enough to avoid that problem by turning off those layers. So if you run into that, in this particular case, since our objects are in separate layers, we can just go into the item list and turn off those other bodies. Let's go back to the shader tree and try baking that again. Bake to texture. All right, that baked out really quick, so we want to save that image. And in the shader tree, I can turn that on, turn these guys off. And then I can also instance that texture now. I can set that as the subsurface color. And then go in here and turn on subsurface at about 50. Yeah, that looks a lot better. That's looking more alive. Maybe adjust that color. A little more green on that tiny fur. It's just a subtle little extra there. That sort of lends the believability of the surface. All right, let's turn our items back on and assess where we are. And we're going to Need to reset this because we zoomed in. All right, in summary, we were able to just adjust some of the surfacing parameters to get a very realistic looking strawberry here. We added in some bump map, adjusted the subsurface colors, tweaked it, and we even added a fur layer here, added to a selection set so that we could get more control over the surfacing of the fur. So coming up next, I think we're going to start setting up our scene for the fruit. So we're going to be opening all the individual files and then merging them all into a single file so that we can do the render on that.